Redditors who grew up with shady/criminal parents, what did your mom or dad teach you was okay to do that you later learned was illegal or seriously frowned upon? Serious. I have fond memories of hanging out in the shed with my parents, me playing with my dolls, and them harvesting their money trees, weeds strewn all over the floor, hanging from the ceiling, the leaves made into a little bed for my Barbie to sleep in. There were a lot of weird things I didn't think much of as a kid, but realized were screwed up as an adult. Like how our family moved 13 times in 15 years. I just assumed people got new houses all the time, and how sometimes I would go to the freezer for some ice cream, and find stacks of cash in the containers. Just weird crap like that. Quite a few things. Backstory: my bio dad was convicted of murder, got away with another murder through claiming self-defense, no clue if it was truly self-defense, and apparently had a third murder that he never got caught for. He would steal constantly from people to things inside stores. One of my earliest memories is wanting this super cute pink hat. I believe I was around 8. He put it on my head, and told me to walk to the car. I remember asking about paying, and he said don't worry, just walk. So, little me walks to the outside doors with her heart pounding, and then the alarm goes off. I freeze, and run back to my dad that was still shopping. First lesson I can remember I learned? You just need to keep walking when those alarms go off. He died a few years back. My brothers and I are decent people. My brother is a great dad, despite who he had as a dad. Also, to answer some of your questions, no, none of us 5 kids have murdered anyone as far as I know. He was an extremely abusive father and husband. I was the only daughter, and he sexually, physically, and emotionally abused me from 7 to 14 years of age. I ended up in foster care at 14. Have 2 great parents who were my first foster family, a loving bio mom who does her best, and even more siblings from my former foster parents. I have my own struggles, but you'd never know the trauma we went through if you met any of us. Thank you all for the kind words. My dad stole a few things in a sneaky way so my brother and I would have won each. In one instance, for example, he bought a Game Boy game. He brought it back to the car, removed the cartridge, and took it back into the store saying the case was empty. He did the same thing with those Pikachu Tamagotchi things. I think his biggest steal was a PlayStation 2. He actually did purchase one. My mom went in and picked it up, but when leaving the store, the door person didn't tear the receipt. So, my dad took the receipt back in, picked up another PS2, stuck the receipt on it, and walked out. The door person tore the receipt this time, but obviously didn't pay attention to the time of sale. Dad also ran a huge business of installing chips in PlayStations so they could play copied games. He would rent games, burn a copy, then sell copies to other people. We had a whole library and catalog of copied games, and added quite a few customers. Looking back, I see how dodgy it was, and why he told me not to tell too many people about it. My dad's no serious criminal, but petty in every way, including the crime he commits. I was basically taught to play dumb, act like you belong, and you can do whatever you want. We snuck into VIP lounges, other people's buffets, and parties at restaurants and events. He once lied to a ticket taker at a movie theater, and got mad when they couldn't find the tickets he ordered online. He had not ordered tickets, but there was a huge line, and he didn't want to wait. We got in for free, and cut a huge line. Also cut lines at Disney Worlds, and other sorts of places. My family did a lot of petty, trashy crime, shoplifting, theft, domestic assault, drugs, etc. I thought it was normal for adults to just kinda go to jail every few years for a day or two until I was 10. Now, my stepdad is out of my life, my mom is too old/ill to do anything particularly bad, and my dad may have helped finance a district attorney's election, which has saved him mountains in legal fees for himself, and the hookers he frequents. My sister. She's 18 years older than me, so my mom would occasionally leave me with her, sometimes for the day, a couple times for 5 days. 1. Her boyfriend, pimp, coming over, and then strange guys coming and going. I was like, what are they doing in there? 2. Driving to her drug dealer's RV in a trailer park. She left me and my niece outside while she screwed him for dope. Again, what are they doing in there? 3. Waking up to all kinds of weird people in the dining room doing drugs out in the open at 8 a.m. 4. Driving severely impaired with 2 kids in the car. 5. She would sleep all day. My niece and I would wake up, she was 5, I was 12, and there would be almost no food in the house, so I had to scrounge. I'm talking potted meat on moldy bread, Baked beans for breakfast. It was some of the most screwed up times. I freaking hate that woman to this day. Don't even bother giving me the "oh she's an addict. Poor her, be kinder to her." No, she also let both of her ex-husbands touch my niece. She was so negligent, I'm shocked that we didn't have worse crap happen. Also, my sister is not my biological mother. You all need to take your conspiracy theories somewhere else. There is solid evidence to prove that she is not my mother. Also, we thought this crap was normal, like weird people in the house, eating moldy food, going to sketchy places. More information. I'm gonna further explain why my sister is 18 years older than me. My mom had her at 18, and then I was a surprise at 36. I look like my mother, and my father, and not like my sister or my siblings. My sister resented my existence from my conception. She was an only child, and then I came, and screwed it up. My sister didn't become a full-blown drug addict until after my nephew was born 3 years later. There's pictures of my sister and mother together with my 36-year-old mother pregnant, and my sister not pregnant in the early 90s. There is a specific photo of my whole family together, including my father, who was just my mom's boyfriend at the time. They broke up, and she told him to kick sand, and she is pregnant in the photo. Also, okay, I know baked beans for breakfast is a thing in the UK and else, but in Texas it's weird AF. That's some poverty crap over here. Baked beans are for serving with barbecue and dinner. I never knew we weren't allowed to drink at the local fair. Mom used to bring beer in a cooler when we went, until I was 21, and a cop stopped me when I was walking around with a beer. So this question brings up a very specific memory. My dad never said explicitly that what he was doing was acceptable, but he certainly didn't tell me that this was wrong. I'm between the ages of 5 to 7, unsure about a specific timeline on this, and my mom is often working in the evenings while my dad is sporadically around. One night, while my mom is gone, Dad gathers me to go for an adventure. Usually this means driving around the city and looking at stuff. Well, Dad pulls up to a hospital and parks. He sits with me in the car and gives me a script, saying that we recently moved here, a lie, and that he had hurt his back while moving boxes, mega lie. I play along because hey, it's my dad, and sure, whatever he says goes. Any other specifics from that night are hazy. I think he managed to talk his way into some sort of painkiller prescription. This was in the early 00s, so opiates weren't as visible as now. My dad has been in successful treatment since then, but man, that's a big memory that stands out for how screwed up my younger life was. My dad was a mechanic. The ones that stick out was when he would charge for a new replacement part, and then go to the local junkyard and get the part from there. If the customer asked up front, he would be honest and offer the two options: junkyard part equals cheap, but likely reliable, or new equals expensive and only parts warranty. If they didn't ask, most of the time it was a junkyard part. Rarely got in trouble or called out since his prices were a fraction of regular shops. Oh, I guess the other main shady part was that he wasn't a legit certified mechanic, and most business was cash/under the table. His apprentice is now my mechanic, and he learned from my dad's mistakes. He provides receipts, boxes, and shows me where he installed the new part, and it's always shiny and new, minus obvious grease handling/installation marks. A family friend was in the import/export business for gemstones. I didn't realize it could be illegal to transport gems across borders. We would have gem parties where a dining table that can sit 12 would be completely covered in bowls of gems, and jewelry to buy. Same as Tupperware parties, but for gems. Some stones my parents got appraised shocked their jeweler. Super rare colors of different stones that they had never seen before. That friend has gone legit, owns some mines in Africa now. I used to be told everything was okay as long as you don't get caught. They kind of said it like a throwaway phrase, but I really took it to heart. It gave me a real lack of respect for any authority at all, and made it seem more like a game than real-life consequences. I would do illegal crap just to get the rush of wondering in whether or not I'd be caught. Once I was caught, I would just shrug and act like their winning didn't bother me. Kinda like their punishment was just them gloating about me getting caught. My parents would often get me to answer the phone as a young kid, like 4 to 5, and older. Anyways, the people on the phone always asked if Jones Mollusk was there. My parents would coach me, "No, Jones Mollusk lives here. You don't know who that is." Well, as a kid I really didn't have a clue who Jones Mollusk was, because Dad was always just Dad or went by his nickname. Didn't find out for years what my dad's real name was. I guess I helped my parents evade a few debt collectors, and God knows what else. Also, me and my sister used to go play Barbies in Daddy's clubhouse. It was our favorite place. Dad built it himself in our backyard, and they even had a big bar and a pool table. and they brought a velvet couch for me and my sister to play on while Dad played pool and visited with all my uncles. Dad always called it his clubhouse too, so when people asked where my dad was, I'd say Dad was probably in his clubhouse, to which my mom would always get so mad at me and I'd be so confused because that's what Dad and everyone else called it, but I wasn't supposed to talk about it apparently. Haha. Yeah, my dad was in a biker gang. My dad, when he took us places like the aquarium or amusement parks, used to always try and get us in cheaper. Well, one thing about me was that I was always a really oblivious child. This both helped and hurt him, such as the phone calls. I mean, I legitimately didn't know who Jones Mollusk was for years, guys, but in this case it backfired. So once my dad was trying to get us into a park or something, and he lied about my age to get me in cheaper, insulted, immediately puffed up, and said, "Dad, I am not 6, I am 7. Cue the brow raise of the attendant, and my dad puffing back, "You're effing 6. Good times. I can't remember if we got in cheaper or not. Probably not, haha. He was so mad after he told me if I say you're 6, you're effing 6. I roll. Dads are weird, I thought. My dad hated cops growing up. He used to call them effing pigs. He'd always made snide remarks about cops just eating donuts and being generally useless. He'd get stopped a lot by them. Just general harassment. I guess everyone knew him and his general associates. Anyways, one day we stop at a Wendy's, Tim Hortons split restaurant. Now if you don't know, sometimes restaurants share a building together, and in this case we were only separated by a short wall to the other side of Tim's. Well, we're waiting for our burger and me being like 4 to 5 whatever, I'm up on my knees looking over the partition. Well, there on the other side are a table full of cops. I remember feeling shocked and suddenly exclaiming very loudly, "Dad, you're right, all them pigs do is eat donuts." My mother was mortified, and she pulled me down to sit. The cops all looked over, I guess, and started laughing. Luckily, my dad thought it was hilarious. I mean, I knew it was illegal, but probably growing all the cannabis when I was a kid. Dad was gonna die of cancer, so he wanted to leave us some money. It was like Diet Breaking Bad. Shoplifting for the most part. I mean, like, she never made us do it, but she didn't hide what she was doing either. She's the reason model homes have cameras now, lol. My mom and dad are trained artists and teachers, and they would frequently counterfeit things like parking permits, coupons, doctor's notes, etc. It was wild. My dad was a tow truck driver, and he would always bring me little presents as a kid that he got out of people's tower cars. As far as I knew, if someone knew their car was going to get towed, they took everything they wanted out of it, and the rest was fair game. It's not fair for me to ask you a question without sharing something of my own. My mother was pretty shady. She was a opioid and benzo addict who took me doctor shopping from place to place looking for prescriptions. She faked seizures and had a rolling list of medical complaints. I don't know if she believed all of her illnesses were real, but she sure acted like she did around us and medical staff. She taught me that it was okay to manipulate doctors, but somehow I grew up to be exactly the opposite, in that I feel embarrassed and guilty seeking medical care even for a legitimate complaint. If we were at home and they yelled pigs, we were to hide behind the couch and be silent. If we were in the car and they yelled pigs, we had to crawl into the floorboard and not move a muscle. I was kidnapped in grade 3 by my dad's supplier. He held us for 2 days. We had no idea. My sister and I met him before, lots of times. When he showed up at school and said our parents were on vacation and to go with him, we did. They had soda and Oreos and a puppy and a Sega Genesis, and it was the best weekend of my life. Found out 20 years later when my mom was complaining about never having had a vacation in her life. I reminded her of that vacation, and she said, "You idiot, you were kidnapped." Oh, cool. My mom was a drug dealer. There are so many things I could list. Here are a few. Smoking pot. When I was about 4, I chased my mom through the Woolworths drugstore screaming, "Mommy, mommy, you dropped your joint. Don't you want your joint?" She hurried faster, shushing me, and I got a big talking to that afternoon. Snorting coke. I was in the 2nd grade when I got sent to the principal's office for teaching my friends how to make lines with salt and use part of a milk straw to snort it. My mom was really pissed. Don't talk to cops or any straight people. I didn't know why at first, but I lived in terror of straight people. I got congratulations for making it through FBI questioning when I was probably 6 years old when they raided our land. SWAT teams are scary. Boobs are good for smuggling. Cleaning out stems and seeds is a fun summer job. Don't say anyone's name on the phone. Those are just a few things I immediately recall. Ooh, I forgot to add how every now and then people in our circle of friends would move far away for a while and change names. And we weren't ever allowed to call them by their old names. My mom also made us believe that morphine was an excellent pain reliever for all ages. My dad was investigated by the FBI for racketeering, but they were unable to press charges on him. He was also sued by a major financial entity for racketeering as well. Anyways, when I was a teenager, my dad had a lawsuit brought against him by multiple employees for unpaid overtime, and he ordered me to go through the boxes upstairs in a warehouse that we had to find all of their time cards. The storage area was a disaster. Papers everywhere. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find them, so I told my dad that it was no use. The time cards weren't there. My dad then yelled at me, telling me that he needed those time cards, and said that all of these people were trying to rip him off, so, if I had to, just make up time cards for them so that they were working 40 hours a week with no overtime. But don't bother telling him about what I did to get the time cards when I had them. I just had to have them for him one way or the other. I didn't think much about the last bit until much later, but, long story short, I ended up making time cards that he used for the case. He won. Realized several years later that my dad had used me for forgery. And when I confronted him about it, he just laughed, and said that I was a minor at the time, and nobody puts a minor in jail for a white-collar crime. I've run into some of those employees since then, and, when they accosted me for being his daughter, and how they would want to punch my dad, or worse, if it was him they ran into, I've always confessed this to them. Ironically enough, they have all said that they would punch him on my behalf, too, because the fact that he used his own daughter pissed them off even more. And about the racketeering thing, he loved laughing about that, and calling himself a don. When I was going to take over the business several years later after the forgery bit, his oldest employees gave me loyalty oaths. I ran like hell. My dad absolutely was a racketeer. My boyfriend always talks about the stories of his dad having friends everywhere. Family would talk about how his now late father had friends no matter where he went in the city, and how great that was. And no matter where they stopped, he would randomly know someone there. Then as an adult he realized that his dad just had drug dealers everywhere, and that's who he was always seeing. Blow into breathalyzers so they could drive. I'm so scared to say this because I've literally never told anyone, but F it. Here it goes. My stepmom worked in the drug treatment field. How it works is if clients stayed in rehab for a certain amount of time, the person who got them in there would get paid. My stepmom had a good heart at first, she really did. However, 80% of her clients were back on the H before the week was over, so my stepmom would take her throwaway clients, give them drugs while they're in rehab for however long, so by the time my stepmom got paid, they would be back on the streets doing the same crap as usual. She was paying them in dope to stay in rehab. The only reason I know this is because I got snoopy, and looked through my stepmom's phone when she let me use it when I needed to call somebody while my phone was broke. I eventually built up the courage to confront her about it, as she said, she didn't do this with all of her clients, some really wanted to get help, and she did help them. And that is true. However, there was no justification for it. It escalated into a heated argument that led to me storming out of the house. She would say things such as, "This is how the electricity stays on." However, after a very meaningful talk, and she doesn't work in the drug field anymore, I truly do believe she feels bad, as she should. We decided to not tell anyone else in the family, mainly because my family is full of ex-drug addicts. My stepmom has been clean off H and meth for 12 years, and it would literally tear our family apart. It feels nice to finally get this off my chest. It has stayed in secrecy since 2015. After reading a lot of these stories, I find comfort knowing that I'm not the only who comes from a screwed up family. Smile. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.